those tears this morning after all of that hard work. In the interview we have coming up next, I think the timing of this is really interesting because we're staying with the care homes story. And we're returning to comments made by the Prime Minister yesterday about how care homes have handled coronavirus during the pandemic.
Yeah, his words have been strongly criticised, haven't they? We've been talking about that this morning, various people making comments about what was said, and also questions about whether the Prime Minister actually apologised for what he said, rather than the clarification we've seen from Number 10.
Yeah, and you asked Alok Sharma, didn't you, to explain what those words had actually meant. Well, let's go straight now to a man who knows all about this. This is Mark Adams, Chief Executive of Community Integrated Care, Health and Social Care Charity. Mark Adams, I'm just going to read out the quote from Boris Johnson yesterday, who said that some care homes, didn't really follow procedures the way that they could have done. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think the juxtaposition with your last feature really sums up the difference. You've got the best of social care and the worst of political leadership. It's very disappointing.
All those weeks ago, before we really knew the extent of the pandemic, how much information did care homes have about procedures and what was coming?
I mean, every care home is regulated either by the CQC in England or the Care Inspectorate in Scotland, and there are absolute pages and pages and pages of processes and procedures we have to follow all of the time. In an unprecedented crisis like this, everybody is scrambling for information and looking at, what can we do? And you tend to rely very heavily on Public Health England and on the guidance that they provide. Over the last 3 months, there have been over 100 revisions of guidance coming out of Public Health England that the sector has had to respond to. So, we're telling our 6,000 care workers on a Monday to do something and then telling them on a Thursday to stop doing it and to do something else. And I think every care operator in the country has followed that guidance to the letter. And so for the government to be critical of the sector and infer that any of the losses and problems are as a result of social care is a massive untruth. And the fact is, it is a chronic failure of government leadership where we've had a litany of mistakes since the beginning of the crisis. And we should be getting an apology from the Prime Minister for that, not some kind of sly curveball where the social care sector is being blamed.
Now, we've just seen from the pictures that we just saw a moment ago, care homes people who work in care homes are a different breed in lots of ways, aren't they? Because they're not necessarily just looking after people in a hospital setting. They're looking after every type of need that they have. It is literally a home for the most vulnerable people. How demoralising is it for those people who work in that industry to hear this?
Well, I mean, you've summed it up, and the previous feature just couldn't have put it better. These are miniature home from homes. They are adopted families. You're not dealing with strangers. You're dealing with people that you become incredibly fond of. And where we've had a crisis, where COVID as an invisible enemy has got through the door, it's not a failure of the care workers who have put their own health and their own family's health at risk to carry on providing that care. It is a failure of the testing regime. The World Health Organization at the beginning of the crisis in February said, testing is the only way to deal with the pandemic. And we gave up on our testing. Care homes didn't actually start getting tested routinely until the end of May. And we've had a situation where, the GPs have stopped visiting, the district nurses have stopped visiting, and the fantastic frontline care workers, many of whom are on minimum wage with no sickness benefits, have really held the line in the fight against COVID, and the government's leadership has been singularly missing.
I just want to give you the line of clarification that came from the government last night, and this is what they said. The Prime Minister was pointing out that nobody knew what the correct procedures were because the extent of asymptomatic transmission was not known at the time. Your reaction to that clarification, moving on from the words that Boris Johnson said?
Boris Johnson went off-piste and I think gave an element of how he truly felt about the situation, and that is very relieving, very revealing and very damning. I'm sure that everybody in the back office, all of his PR advisors, were absolutely aghast at what he said, and this smacks of a kind of Dominic Cummings rewrite. it wasn't a clarification.
But obviously, you've even said yourself you appreciate that these were unprecedented times with the advice changing day to day. You must be able to see that things were so difficult to predict that it was impossible to get this 100% right.
No, I disagree. I think in January and February it was very clear with what was happening in care homes in Washington and America and Italy and Spain that we were going to have the brunt of the issue with COVID in the care home sector. You know, most of the care home sector went into lockdown around about the sort of 1st to the 10th of March. The Prime Minister was still going to Cheltenham Gold Cup on the 13th of March and allowing lots of Spaniards to come over for the Liverpool Atletico Madrid game. You know, you could see this problem building, and almost the last people to react were the government.
Mark Adams, Chief Executive of Community Integrated Care, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's 8:20.